Hello. Hey, Marina. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good as well. It's been a busy day for me. How about yours?
Yeah, here too. A busy Monday, just the way we like it. Starting the
Yep.
week full energy.
Yeah, I hit the ground running, right?
Yeah.
I really like that it's getting warmer. So when I had a long weekend last week, and then when we came back from vacation in Hamburg, it was already warm, and I had my really warm winter jacket on. I was like, what's going on here?
Wait, when we're saying warm, define it for me, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, above zero.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Or
That
maybe above 10 degrees Celsius.
yeah, oh yeah, above 10 degrees is spring already.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. How's
right.
the weather in London?
It's very nice. Today was very sunny. So for me it's not even about the temperature. I can deal with colder temperatures, but the lack of sun after 4 p.m. and gray skies really get into my mood. But we had a very beautiful day and I watched the sunset from my balcony, so it was very nice.
Oh, lovely. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Sounds great. All right. So we're not here to talk about the weather.
Nope. As much as we enjoy doing that,
Yeah.
we do something else.
Yeah. So do you want to do the intro?
Yes. So yeah, welcome everyone watching us. We are very excited. I am very excited at least because I have something very cool to share that I fixed from last week. But first, before we jump into that, I would like to tell everyone, please let's be nice to each other. We have a code of conduct in this channel. So let's all be nice and polite. And if you have any questions, please send them in the chat. We'll do our best to reply to as many as we can. And with that said, Peter, do you remember what I had to fix from last week?
Yeah, so I remember that I made a very bad joke about Gradle downloading the internet, and I apologize for that.
Good
And
job.
and we had to wait a long time for it to do anything, and then we ran the app and it came on, but then it really didn't work, right?
Yeah,
And we were wondering what was happening. So
it was crashing over and over. And yes, I had a lot of problems with Gradle, and which is a classic thing. And I feel like you predicted that with your joke or jinxed that with your joke.
oh yeah, maybe I'm at fault.
Yeah. But also I was using a machine that wasn't the best to like handle video in many tabs open and heavy processing as in Android Studio emulators and Antigravity. So I do have uh, a different one today. But that wasn't the cause of the crash. The cause of the crash actually, do you remember that towards the end, and by the way, if you're new to this channel and to this live stream, we are building a to-do list application. And the iOS one we did a couple episodes ago. And then the last episode, we were doing the Android one with Antigravity and other AI tools like Stitch for UI. And then when I ran it on Android Studio on the Android emulator, it crashed right away. And from the logs, we were seeing that there was something to do with the priority because each one of the tasks on the to-do list has a priority that we defined as, let me open, can I show my screen?
Sure, sure. Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to switch over and then here's your screen. I know that Noe is on the live stream, so Noe, please let us know if you can read this.
Yeah. If it's slightly uncomfortable for me. So according to Noe, it should be good, right?
Okay, yeah.
Um, nice. So if we go here in the model, we have three task priorities defined: low, medium, and high, which is the same one that we had in iOS, and we had this
Mhm.
shared PRD, so we used in Antigravity. So it did create the same priorities: low, medium, high. The problem, however, we thought that we had a problem with like one of the tasks. There was a high priority, and the tests that we did live were like, oh, what if we changed to medium and low? We were just trying to guess what was going on, and that wasn't fixing. But that is because it wasn't the type of priority, but the fact that it was lowercase on the iOS app and uppercase on the Android app.
For real?
I know. Something like so basic as uppercase and lowercase. It's case sensitive. Who could imagine? So,
Computers, man, always picky.
and it's always the thing, the simplest thing that we don't think about, right?
Yeah.
So basically, what we had was this low, like low, medium, and high, like this. And iOS had the lowercase version of those. And then we have, my God, the name just slipped from my mind. How reflection. So we have reflection in Firestore, which allows us to have an enum class in Android, and then that's being transformed to one string and being stored in a document in Firestore. And then it is intelligent enough to translate that back into an enum in my Android code. However, it is case sensitive. So we have to be careful with that, because that's when it was breaking, because it wasn't finding any option in that enum that would map high in lowercase to high in uppercase. A way to do that, which is the first option that I thought before I went with this, was like, as you can see now, I also have them with just the first letter in lowercase and the rest in, the first one in uppercase and the rest in lowercase. So it matches the iOS one, and I've done tests back and forth, and it works now. But the thing that you could also do, like save the task object with a string. Not here, I mean on the data source here. When you add a task, you could have two types of objects, like a task that you send to Firestore and then has priority as a string that won't crash when it's converted, and then you do the conversion on your code when you and then you have like probably a task as an object in the UI that is just the element that will be mapped to the UI, right? But I didn't want to do that. I didn't think it would make sense to duplicate the task as a visual element and as a data model. And instead, I just updated the wording, the way we write it. But if for any case, Android developers out there need to have them as uppercase or lowercase or any format for any reason, you can do that. You can do a manual conversion and then just have a helper function that will translate that that string back from Firestore to your voice.
I've got a question though. So in Swift for enums, you can associate values. So for example, you could say, even though I'm providing the name, you could say, for example, low equals, and then you could have a completely different string. So is that something that you could do in Kotlin as well?
I think we can do that, because we could like override maybe the name of it, because I think this maps to like a name. But I believe maybe if we did like an override. Nope. Oh. Override, no, not what I wanted. There must be a way. I just didn't try it when on my trials. I did a manual conversion, and then I defaulted back to just writing the same way as iOS. But I will do some homework. Wait, let me open this. Let's see. Use.
Yeah, apparently you can.
Oh, you have it there? Can you send me the link?
I just searched for enum classes, and then it goes to the Kotlin documentation, and it shows you something where you can, for example, it has a color. Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
so maybe that would be a way to do it.
Yeah, but this is do you see this does not maps to the name? So maybe that's what I'm saying. Maybe we need to override the name. Let me see if that's possible, because this is like when you have an enum that you need to pass on some information with it. For example, if you want to have that's a very good example. Actually, I can use the code that we are working on. Let me open here. So if, for example, each one of these has an element on the UI, right? So if we wanted to say that low is supposed to be like a blue color, we could have an element here for color, an element for title, an element for all sorts of things that we need to represent as low, medium, and high, and they will carry it around to the UI. Does that make sense?
So if you, just looking back at the code sample in the documentation.
Yeah.
So for example, if you, instead of saying we've got color and then it has well RGB, but if you set bell and then priority name, exactly.
Yes.
And then that is a string. And then where you define the cases, you would say low is low, but with a different spelling.
Yeah.
Would that work?
Yes, that would potentially work. Let's put it to test. Page users to reflect signature names. Yes. Okay. No, I don't need to do that. So
low, yeah, like that. And then exactly, use a different spelling.
No, but I'm doing this because I'm going to convert them back to this.
Oh yeah.
And then see if it won't crash.
Yep. Good point.
There will probably be another places here that I need to update. Let me see. Oh.
I also think the override makes the compiler unhappy.
Yeah. Wait. Name is test is fine and cannot be. Do you see? It cannot be overridden. Name is fine.
Okay. Okay.
So back to. Such a little bit more. How can I? Let's see. What's the? Why don't we Gemini that? What are some alternatives? What are some alternatives to overriding the name of in Kotlin? You see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So it looks like it's making stuff slightly more complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll have to do some sort of mapping there.
Yeah, so what reflection does is calling the toString method of an enum, and then we would have to override that to then call the string that we have as a variable instead of the name itself, which doesn't sound right to me. Because the toString should do that, right? toString pass the object toString. So it doesn't, I don't know. I prefer the since we don't have any restrictions on how, like, any reasons why the Android needs to be uppercase, I think it makes more sense for our solution to just have them as iOS. Agreed?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually a good point. So I think one thing that we should do next is make sure that our data models are aligned, right? And so maybe we can switch to my screen. And then, so I've got...
just a tiny second. Wait.
Sorry.
There we go. Did you see that?
Oh, sorry. Can you do it again?
Yeah. Are you looking
at
the app? Nice. I did it. Show up live. So I promised and I delivered.
Amazing. Cool. Well done.
Now we can go to
your screen. Oh, by the way, can you let me... We're connected to the same project, right?
We are, yes. I have it right here. So this was the one that you see is completed true.
Yep. Nice.
Also, on the note, on the data model note, can I say one more thing before we switch to your?
Yes. Of course.
There is this thing in Android that when it's doing reflection, it sometimes changes the name a little bit. So, for example, I have this is completed variable inside the task, but it is mapped as just completed on Firestore due to naming patterns.
Mhm.
But I want it to stick as is completed because that's the one you're using on iOS. So if I don't do this property name, which is from Firestore, right? The import is here.
Mm.
If I don't use property name, it will be converted to completed. And then when you try to pull that,
Mm.
it won't understand. And then you will potentially crash. So
Mm.
on the note of always matching data models, it's worth checking if all of the names are being equal on the Firestore document, not only in the code, because this translation between code and Firestore can modify the name a little bit. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, let's also check for that. That's a good point. Okay, cool. So can we switch to my screen?
We can. Do I need to
Okay.
start mine?
No. I just wanted to ask if you're happy to switch over. Okay, so I am in Antigravity and I've got my my Xcode running in the background. I've got my simulator running in the background. And what I wanted to do first is, so we have the Android project and the iOS project here. And now we can go in and say, and this is probably not large enough for people. So this is uncomfortable for me. Okay. All right. So as a first step, let's see if the data model matches. So please analyze the data model of the Android and the iOS app and tell me if they match. So depending on how this goes, it will show as a table saying, oh yeah, these properties match, they have the same name, or something is missing. Because when I reviewed your pull request, I noticed that you have an additional field in Android code, and I was like, I think that we don't have this in the iOS app. So let's see. Yeah. So, and I mean, it's a situation that you run into all of the time, right? I mean, you have a product manager. Product manager says, "Can you please implement this thing here?" And then you've got the different teams, and they go off and build something. And then you might have different look and feel and different data model, and you need to make sure that it's not different. So here we go. We have a key difference. We have a missing field named description. And what else? So we've got the ID, they match. We've got the title, they match. Description is missing in iOS, is completed. And that's interesting, right? So you mentioned that is completed is the name on the class, but you need to mark it up so that it actually gets written back to the database as is completed. So it didn't say anything about that. Maybe it glossed over it because I didn't ask about that.
Or maybe recognize that it's already using property name.
Yep, exactly. And then we've got our task priority enum, we've got our due date, and both of them are optional. And then we've got the created at and user ID, right? So, and then would you like me to align the models by adding the description field to the iOS app? Yes, let's do that. But can you please make a suggestion how to surface this in the UI? Create a an implementation plan for me first. Okay, so while it's doing that, maybe we can go back and take a look at how this looks in the Android application. So can you show us the part in the UI where you use the description field, Marina?
Yes. Do you have my screen up
Yep,
again?
you're on.
Nice. So when I click, did everyone see that? The click is on the fab right here, floating action button.
Yep.
And then, yeah, tell me what's it. Well, add description.
Very meta.
iOS. iOS app still doesn't have a field, so we're going to add it today. It's high priority, and the due date is today. And what time is it for you, since this is a test for you?
It's 22 past 7.
Okay, so it's going to be 7. Oh, okay, I'm actually gonna put 8 as the deadline. PM. Okay. Save task. There you go. Add description to field. Oh, description field. That is a double 2. I still don't have the update. So what I'm gonna do is hack the app. Where is it? Here. Add description.
Oh, there is no edit field.
No, I just got the writing. Yeah, I don't have an edit field here yet on the UI. Do you have an edit field on the to-do items?
I don't think so.
The only update I can do is checkbox, like completed or completed.
That's the most important one.
Yeah, exactly. It would be very bad if our to-do list couldn't accomplish the basic of a to-do list. Yeah, maybe this is something that we could try to build today as well, an edit button.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see what it came up with when I asked it to suggest how to implement that. So it said, I've put together an implementation plan, and to surfaces in the UI, I suggest adding a task screen, adding a new text field for description in the entry form, and in the task list, displaying the description as a smaller secondary text line under the title in each task row, but only if a description exists. Does that sound good to you?
It does. There will be a slight difference for Android because on the task list, we don't see a brief description on the item, but this is something that we can work on later.
Okay.
I see a quick description.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to green light the implementation plan. So now it's going to go ahead and so this is, I need to make more space. Oh, wow. It even starts using the MCP server.
Yeah.
Okay, so oh, by the way, so this might be interesting for folks watching. What is happening here is, first of all, it's updating the code. So it's added a couple of lines of code here for the task row view, and it added the field to the task item. And in the add task view, we've got another section with a text input field. And then where is it? I saw it starting the MCP server. Well, it did.
At some point.
That's when it collapses, expand all. Let's see. Yeah, I think here. Here we go. So it used the Xcode-tools MCP server, and that is the MCP server that Apple provides in Xcode, right? So, and it goes ahead and it compiles, it uses Xcode to compile to make sure that everything works. And then it said, yeah, this is fine. And then we should be able to run that. So if I go back into Xcode and then I go ahead and run,
Oh, there you go.
and then any moment, yeah, here we, well, this is for the priorities. I think I need to add something.
Add one,
yeah, okay, here we go. Okay, priority is high because we're doing this today. Add. And then you've got this description here.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the database. And then I'm going to tick this off so we can do this again. There we go. So down here, we've got the description. And let's see if the snapshot listener works.
Yep.
It does. Nice. Okay, cool. So we've caught up with the data model, and that leads me to the next thing that we wanted to do today. So first of all, let's say this is all good, and where can we? It's always, when you have large text, it's so hard to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the uncomfortable part. Review changes. Yeah, I think this is fine, but where can I accept them? Well, let's just say it's fine. So, so the next thing is we want to work on adding support for lists, right? So what I'm thinking what we could do is we could ask Antigravity to give us a visual representation of the data model.
Yeah.
And I thought about this today, how to best do this. And at first I thought, okay, we can go and use a drawing tool like XColorDraw, for example, to draw the data model ourselves. But we can also have the model create the data model for us. So let's try that. Can you please generate a visual representation of the data model of the app as a mermaid diagram?
It always gets me when you start talking to your computer, because for a split second, I always think you're talking to me, and I'm like, what? No, I cannot draw it right now.
So you think I should use the mouse?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Nice.
Wow. Let's see what it's doing. It looks at the Kotlin code as well.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So here's our task list. So it will research and analyze the models, and to do that, it will look at the Kotlin and Swift code, and then look at other relevant data structures. Okay. Here's the plan. Looking good. So I tried this earlier today, and I found that so for those who don't know, mermaid diagrams are a textual format that allows you to specify all sorts of different diagrams. For example, class diagrams or flow diagrams or entity relationship diagrams, or yeah, and here we go. So it created an entity relationship diagram for us which, I mean, because it is not because Firestore is a NoSQL database, feels a little bit weird because it's not strictly a SQL sort of data model, but why not? And if we look at this, we will see that this is the walkthrough, right? So that is one of the artifacts that Antigravity creates for us. And this looks good, but we can't edit this. So I wanted to somehow be able to edit this. And so when I tried this earlier today, I said, can you please create a markdown file with the data model and put it into the root folder of the project? So hopefully that gives us a markdown file with the mermaid diagram inside, and then we can show how that looks. Data migration. Well, hopefully we're not getting migration.
Oh, serious.
Okay, so this should, and here we go. So,
okay, nice.
And this is how it looks like in Markdown, right? So you've got the source code snippet, Mermaid, and then this is a class diagram now for whatever reason. And if we, there should be a preview, and here we go. So we can get a preview, and the fact that it renders the source code as a diagram, that is because I installed an extension, which is this one here. So if you install the, and I apologize for the size of my screen. So if you install the Markdown Preview Mermaid diagram support, it will plug in to the Markdown editor or Markdown preview editor in VS Code and render everything that's a mermaid diagram as an image. And that is pretty sweet, I think. So that is a really good find.
Yeah, that is how did you come across that?
I literally went into the extension store and said mermaid.
Oh, wow.
Like that. And then you get like a bunch of things. For example, the official Mermaid support, which wants you to sign in to their website and potentially buy a license because, it's not just open source, but, open source plus commercial license.
Yeah.
But this one here does what we need. So the cool thing is that now we can basically just go in and do stuff like editing this and getting all the changes on the right-hand side. So that is pretty nice. So we've got our task and we've got the task priority. So for lists, that is what we're here for.
Yeah.
Marina, we spoke about this a long time. There are many ways how to implement this. So let's recap for people on the stream what we have in mind for modeling the lists. So maybe we can start with how we store the tasks.
So we are storing the tasks in one, but can you change to my because I literally have the task right now. All right, so this is, for those of you who never saw Firestore before, this is how the Firestore dashboard looks like. And we have a collection called tasks. And then all the documents inside this collection are different to the list that you see on the app. So those apps that we were showing before, each one of them is this document. And for each document, we have the ID that identifies them is randomly generated by Firestore. And we know that each one of the to-do items belong to someone because we store the user ID inside of this. So when we're pulling all the tasks from Firestore in our client apps, we check for the user ID field to make sure it matches the authenticated user. And this is the structure that we have right now.
Exactly. So, and the important thing here is that this is a top level collection, and all of the tasks are in there, right? So I'm just calling this out once more because the alternative would be to have a sub-collection for each of the users inside of the tasks collection, right? We could have tasks and then a sub-collection with the user ID. And inside that sub-collection, we could have all the tasks that belong to the user, right? That would also be a possible data model.
Yeah.
So for lists, there are many ways to do that as well. But I think, if we, for a moment, think about if we do the same. So if we have a top-level collection called lists, for example, and then we would have documents in there that have a unique ID, and they would have basically two fields. One field is the title, and that is the name of the list. And the other field would be the user ID to which the list belongs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how would we then connect the lists to, or would we connect the tasks to the lists?
So in that scenario that you're saying, the tasks would be a sub-collection of lists. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that would be one way to do it, right?
Yeah, that I think I misunderstood what you said, because I thought you said like we explained the other option for our model, which would be having the tasks as a sub-collection of the user belonging to each user. And then you said, what if we did the same with lists? So now I have the
Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
Maybe I should have said, well, what if we take the same approach that we see here,
Right now.
have a top-level collection
Right.
for the lists and model it like that.
Okay. Now that makes sense. So what we could do, let me think. We could have a collection lists, and to each new list that we create, the list would have a random, let me think, yeah, a random ID, and then an owner of that list, and then a list of task IDs. And then we could pull all the task IDs that belong to that list. And then in the future, if we want to make this list shareable, we can add another field for like list of user IDs that are also part of that list. They are not the owner. That's what I have in mind. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that works, right? So we would have a top-level collection for all the lists. We would add a field with the username so that we can easily find all the lists that belong to a user.
Yeah.
And then in the task documents, in addition to the user ID, we would also have a list ID, and that says this is the list it belongs to.
Okay.
Sorry, or did I misunderstand?
No, I had the other way around. I had, because you thought about having, so you want to have both, like a field on the task document that says which list it belongs to. And then in the list document, we have a field with an array of IDs of tasks that belong to that list.
No.
Just
no.
the first option. Okay.
I mean, we can go ahead and try it out here, right? So let's maybe we can do that. Can you create a top-level collection named lists? And then we create a document in there. And then let's have a field called title. And that can be the name of the list, and that, live stream. Yep, sounds good. And then we need another field for the user ID. So let's, what did we call them? UID?
I think we called let me save the document.
Yeah, user ID. We call them user ID.
Yeah, let me get one task that is mine now. Should apply here, user ID. Now we go back to lists. Well, let me use your ID.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're going to be testing this on iOS. So what was the...
I think it's the task that is at the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of the list.
Add a description field to the iOS app. No, I think
that's the one.
No,
yeah,
no.
Because it has all the exclamation marks.
You're right. Okay. So here now we're going to edit the user ID to be this. What are the fields you, for now, that's all you want, or do you have any other?
I think that's enough. So, and then if we go back into a task document, if you go back into that task document where you picked the user ID from, and then
the ID first. You need to copy this.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then we would add a field called list ID. So that is what I had in mind. So then when we go ahead and display a list, we would run a query saying, show me all of the tasks that have where the user ID is so-and-so and where the list ID is so-and-so.
Yeah, that makes sense. So first we fetch the lists that belong. I'm thinking if I'm the client code, I fetch all the lists that have my user ID. And then for each list ID on that returned query, I run another query, which then gets the tasks based on list ID and user ID.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for that second search, the list ID would be enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it should be, pretty straightforward and not very complex because, we'd only fetch those tasks whenever the user taps on one of those lists.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go back into Antigravity, and then I'm going to tell it, what we have in mind. So we want to implement lists, and for that, we are thinking that we want to have a top-level collection called lists. And in the task document, we would have an additional field called list ID that refers to the list that this item belongs to. Can you please walk me through what else we would have to do in order to implement this? And also, please tell us if this is a good data model. All right, let's see. Okay, so yeah, the interesting thing is it now seems to analyze both the Kotlin and the Swift code for all of the things that we do. Okay, so.
Which is a good thing, right? In a real world scenario, you will want your client apps to match.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's a great question, Peter. It is a very solid and common approach. Is this a good data model? Yes, this is. So the advantages are, let me make this larger. Flexibility. You can easily show an inbox or all tasks view by querying the task collection based on the user ID. And that is one thing that I really like. So, if we want to display all of the user's tasks, we can basically just say, give me all of the tasks that match this user ID and don't provide any list ID. And then we get all of them. Then performance-wise, querying a top-level collection with a filter is very efficient, and it is basically an O of an operation. Then moving a task from one list to another only requires updating a single field, the list ID, which is also really good. So we don't have to delete an element from a sub-collection, move it to another collection, all of that. And we don't have deep sub-collections. So data integrity. Firestore doesn't enforce foreign key relationships. If you delete a list, you'll need to decide what happens to the tasks.
Hmm.
The good thing is, though, they don't vanish into the void. They will still be in this inbox list, right? So, but we'll have to implement that thing, right? So if we don't have an inbox of sorts, then they will be gone. So that's something to keep in mind.
But still, like, this is something that needs to be, like, we would need to update that ID on the list ID of that document to be like a generic ID of some sort, some way that we could pull that on the box, because otherwise, how would we know, right? But this is for the future. But like, this is a good point that Antigravity brought us, because even if we don't want to delete that task, we still need to do something about it when the list ceases to exist.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, it leads me to one interesting thing. So instead of deleting something, you can soft delete it, right?
Yeah.
Have you heard of this concept before?
Yeah, but can you explain it again to me? Like, soft is not deleting everything that is dependent on that data.
So the way how I understand soft deletion is that, let's say you want to delete, let's talk about, let's go back to your screen, and then can you go back to the task that
Yeah.
we just edited?
This
So
one.
let's say we wanted to delete this task. One
Mhm.
way to do it is to actually delete the document, and then it's gone. But we all know that we've accidentally deleted stuff, and then we wish that we hadn't. And then there is no way how you can get it back, unless you have a backup. So the way to work around this is to use a soft delete. And that means you would add another field to the document, which is named deleted or deleted on or something like that. And
Whoa.
then you would basically say, this document here is deleted. And then in all of the clients, you would have to have a filter that says, if there are, don't show any documents that are marked as deleted. And then it is easy to go back and say, I want to undo what I did, and then your application can show you all of the things that you accidentally deleted, or all of the things that you deleted. And then even if you add a timestamp, it could even order this chronologically so that you can see, oh, today I deleted this thing, and a week ago I deleted the other thing.
Yeah, and then like in a month or so, we can define a recurring function that like just cleans your database if it's like longer than.
Exactly. I think there might even be a Firebase extension that does that.
I think so. That's what I got the name from, but I gave you the description of a shallow deletion, not a deletion.
True.
But
Yeah. I think you were thinking
shallow,
SQL.
not soft. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, let's cross that bridge when we come to it, because we are not dealing with list deletion yet, since we didn't even create the lists yet.
Exactly. So if we go back into the into Antigravity and then take a look at what it suggests for the implementation plan. So it says we need to define a list model, and it suggests calling a task list in both Swift and Kotlin. And here we have the ID, the title, the user ID. Oh, and then it's, models are always the same. They're always like, here's your answer. And would you like me to add, something
Something.
additional to that? And
Here's
so
how you
it's,
can improve your idea somehow.
yeah, exactly. It's similar to when you go to and do your groceries, and you go to one of those stores where you talk to a person and you say, I want this, this, and that, and they'll be like, oh, and would you like to have, a piece of bread with that?
Yeah. Or close the store and you're like, oh, that would go very well with this purse. What do you think?
Exactly. Always upsell.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then update the task model. So we have, so we know which list a task belongs to. Then create a list repository. So that's the class that fetches the data and writes it back. And then we'd also have to update the task repository so that we can filter for specific lists and automatic injection. So this is not dependency injection, but when you create a new task from within a list, you need to add a list ID to that task. And then you would need to update your Firestore rules. And that is something that we also need to discuss because we don't have rules for now.
We are on test mode still.
Exactly. So would you like me to start by updating our visual data model to include these relationships, or should we dive straight into the code? Let's update the data model first.
Also, do we want to, well, now you hit enter, but do we want to keep the color and icon idea it gave us?
Yeah, what do you think? Good, bad?
I feel like this is, well, unless this is something that the user can pick.
Yeah, good point.
It is a bit like, why would we store that in the database, you know?
Yeah, true. Okay, so we the good thing is that we can still make changes. So we can go in and take a look at our implementation plan here. Oh, so this implementation plan is for updating the model.
Yeah, our diagram.
Okay, so let's do that first, and then once it's done that, we can comment on it and say, well, no colors, please. And here is the accept button, by the way.
Yeah, but I'm with you. It really vanished when you wanted to click on it.
Yeah. Okay, so walkthrough is ready, and here is the updated data model.
Nice. Let's see the preview.
And let's see the preview task. Yeah, so task list belongs to task lists. Yeah, okay. So now, how can we tell it that we don't want the color?
There is, oh, you passed it already. There. So lines 25, 24, and 25, we can add a comment.
Okay, so I'll mark this and then I'll say chat. Hello, why does it not go into the chat?
Do we have to, you have to accept the changes, I think?
Oh, do you think so?
I think so.
Let me.
I think right now it's like a ghost change, you know, so that's what
yeah, but now I did something to make it go away. So here we go. Accept all. Okay, so. And then, nope.
Nope, that wasn't the case. I'm sorry.
No, it was, it was a good call. So let me see. I'll highlight this, and then we had second thoughts. No colors on the lists, please.
Or icons. Oh well, but that's the row below.
Yeah, yeah. Don't you find it funny that even for those changes, it always comes up with an implementation plan? I mean, it's probably because at one point it was overly eager to do stuff, and then I got really upset and said, you always need to create an implementation plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so where is our data model? Okay, so delete it. Nice.
Yeah.
Great. So,
Did
which
it
brings...
Sorry. If you scroll down a little bit, can you scroll down a little bit on that file?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Right. I just wanted to make sure it deleted from there as well, from the description.
Yeah. So the next question that we need to discuss is, should we YOLO this and say, please implement this for Android and iOS at the same time?
Yeah, why not? Let's
Okay,
do
well,
that. And then when you commit, you tell me the branch and I can pull it here and try to
oh,
run.
we're on the main branch. Oh God. Oh, we can't have
What,
that.
Peter?
We can't have that.
No.
Where is my mouse cursor here? Okay, so let's get help. I think we can go ahead and start implementing this, but I want you to make sure that this is all cleanly separated. So we'll want to have a new branch that this lives in. So please first create the branch, then create an implementation plan and show it to us for approval and discussion. Thank you very much. Let's see.
Now we just need a joke.
Or some elevator music.
Some elevator music.
But, you know, I think this should be easy enough. And I should come back in a couple of seconds. You know, the one time I live streamed and had 2 agents running at the same time, and I basically wanted to switch back and forth, and one agent was working on a UI feature and the other agent was working on a backend feature, and they were not related. And every time I came to the other agent, it was already finished.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
a good way to run. Oh, you said it was a live stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. So you didn't have to think of any jokes or any stories or any.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I was I was live streaming solo, so there was no other person I could talk to.
Yeah, okay. Then that's the ideal scenario. Like they were always ready for when you want. It's like when you have those culinary programs on the TV and they put, have you seen those? Like they spice, like let's say the meat and everything, and they're like, okay, let's see how it looks like. And then there was another one in the oven already, like show in the TV. That's how
Exactly.
it looks like.
So it said it created a feature/list branch on GitHub as you requested. I don't know, Marina, did you hear me request that on GitHub?
I don't think so. You see, I think you asked for a local branch, but
Yeah. Well, I didn't say local or remote, but you know, I had local in mind.
yeah.
So you always have to be very specific. But here we go. So it is on GitHub. I've also drafted a detailed implementation plan that covers the necessary changes. So let's take a look at that. So the feature will be developed in the features list branch, shared model, already updated to, yeah, so the data model MD file is updated. And then it wants to make changes to the iOS application. And that's so interesting because here, can you see that? It
Yeah,
wants to make a
it's
change to,
but it's clearly a Kotlin file.
yeah. Yeah, so, but down here, everything is in the clear, right? So down here, everything is Kotlin.
Yeah.
So I didn't get
This
confused.
bugs a little bit there.
Yeah. So we've got the task item, we've got the task list. It wants to create a repository. It wants to update the task repository, and then it wants to update the task list view. Okay, so this is going to be quite interesting because the navigation is going to be a lot more complicated, right? We need to have some sort of lists structure, and we need to drill down.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in seeing how that works.
Can I see
And
the
wants to use a navigation split view. So how about Android?
Let me see. So yeah, we're gonna have list ID there, and then you're gonna have the task list data class, and then methods. Screen updating. Yeah. Database repository. Expose new. Yes. Task list screen. Update UI to handle list selection and navigation. Yes. It doesn't go on any specifics about how he's gonna handle the UI navigation, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll see.
So verification plan. Okay, let's see. Okay. Do you have any notes?
Nope.
No notes? Okay, let's do
Let's
it.
hit that button.
Let's YOLO.
I am checking out the branch that you created here.
Oh, also, I do hope that it's going to switch to the branch because locally we're still on main.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
it's funny that it created it on GitHub and it didn't pick up the like, I want to use this branch here for these changes.
Exactly. I mean, it's also quite interesting that apparently, according to VS Code, this feature/lists branch on GitHub that we just created already was created 3 days ago. That is a lie.
That is a lie. It wasn't. It wasn't that.
Maybe, oh, so maybe the last change that you made on main was 3 days ago, right?
Yeah.
And then the UI got confused. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm guessing that we'll have to tell it to commit all the changes to the correct branch locally.
Yeah.
Because at the moment it's still working on main.
I'm already on feature lists here. So yeah, when you commit, I can pull.
Okay, so while this is working, we can take a look at some of the questions that people had on the chat. So Rohan said, I have a question, and he says, I have a medical software prepared with Google AI Studio. Now I want to transfer patient case sheet on the software. I'm currently using Superbase. I want to shift to Firebase if that's possible. So that should definitely be possible. I mean, I'm a bit surprised that AI Studio generated something using Superbase. I mean, probably if you prompt it to, right? If you tell it, hey, I want to use Superbase, can you please do that? That will probably work.
But not out of the box.
No, if you don't say anything about how you want to store data and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think so the interesting question now obviously is you've got your AI Studio project there and you implemented something and now you want to make a change. Will it be possible for AI Studio to figure out, oh, we need to make a migration from Superbase to Firebase. How is that going to work? And then, there needs to be support for Firebase in AI Studio, right? So that's maybe one of the first things that need to land. And then once that's there, you should be able to migrate. It's a really interesting question because so I've used AI Studio to build a couple of apps for myself and for my dad. And you can remix an application. Have you tried that?
Remix? As in what?
So it's basically, so I think it's just a fancy term for creating a branch or a fork.
Okay. No, I never tried that.
Yeah.
Is that the name of the feature, remix?
Yeah. So you let me see if I can. This is still going on for a bit. So let's see if I can bring this up. And maybe I should do this on off screen first. AI.dev. No, I can go in here, right? Okay, so
All right.
this is the thing, and then yeah, so this is what I built for my dad. It's basically, so he's a stamp collector. And here's the remix button. So you can click on remix, and then it says, okay, so what's the new title of the application and the new description, and then you press apply, and then it creates a new project based on the existing project with a new name, with a new description potentially, and then you can just continue working on that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What was the app that you built for you? Because you said you built one for that
Oh,
and you brainstormed one for you?
so the one that I started working on for myself is a social audience dashboard.
Yeah.
And I got really excited because it worked quite well.
Yeah.
And then it said something like, oh, you need to paste your API keys for all the social media platforms. And I was like, wow, that's really good. But it means that for many of them, you'll have to register for a developer account. And for X, for example, you'll need to put down money to do that. And I think it's not just $10, but like
It's more money. Yeah.
more money.
Yeah. Let's leave it at that. More money.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah, this is loading. Yeah, it takes a while to load. Let's see how far we've come with
Antigravity.
our anti-gravity. Okay,
Oh,
it's finished.
yes.
Okay, so what we will do is, because we yield this anyways, oh, okay, so first of all, I think you worked on main. Please switch to the branch you created and then commit the changes there. I was about to say, and then push.
Oh, wow.
But
Let's wait. Let's test first.
I want to be sure.
Yeah.
I've implemented the list features. I'm now switching to feature list branch and preparing to commit the changes as requested.
Yay.
But what I find fun. Oh, here we go. Now the status line says we are on features / lists. Because that's the thing when you work in Gemini CLI and you make it do things. For example, when you say, can you please create a new work tree? It says, well, I've done that. But then because it is not as tightly integrated into Antigravity as one might wish, Antigravity does not realize that Gemini CLI has created a new work tree. So we are here. And now we can basically say, staged all the changes. Great. Please write a meaningful commit message and commit. Commit to it. Wow, that's really nice. I feel, the commit messages that we get are so much better.
Yeah, they're so much more detailed. How often in your developer career have you seen a pull request with like 75 files changed and a 2-line description about the
Yeah.
75?
Yeah. Okay, great. Please push. I mean, that literally was a click that I saved. Okay.
Okay.
So
Gosh, okay. Let me run a poll here.
okay, and in the meantime, I'm going to see if this compiles.
Okay. Let me. Same here. Okay, I've got. I've got task. I've got task list. Yeah. Lists. We have new functions. All right. Let's try to run again.
Oh, for me, it failed. Okay.
Compiling or running? Oh, it failed here as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's the UID, right? So is it the same for you?
Nope, it's on the Jetpack Compose UI, but it's just because I'm using okay, I've already fixed that. It's an experimental API for the top app bar, and it just needed to be tagged as like experimental. So I just did that, and I'm trying to run again. But tell me your error, please.
So it used UID instead of user ID.
Oh. For task list. Oh no, for mine it used user ID.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Why?
And it compiled and it ran, and I have a list.
That is wild. Really?
Here, it's actually working. Do you wanna show mine? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you showing my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. So I have an all tasks here. If I click inside, I can see the tasks that I had before. Let me try creating one more. Testing live. Okay, created here. We tested live. Now let me try create another list. Fancy list name. Well, I'm gonna create the same that I created for you. Live stream tasks. Right now. For me, it's 7 p.m.
Nice.
Oh, it does. Look at
That is so cool.
So
Wow.
good. Do you want to see our Firestore?
Yeah, let's see it in a database.
So we have the one that was created for you and the new one that I created. But funny enough, the old tasks that I have, I think I'm interested in seeing the code for that, like how it's registering that all the tasks that don't have
Well, what's the name of the list? All tasks. Okay.
all tasks.
Yeah. So is the one that you created in the new list you created also in the all tasks?
No, the one that I created is the one that I just created now on the list went to the correct list. And on the all tasks, I created the testing live.
But the second from the top, isn't that the one that you created in the other list? Confirm list creation worked.
Oh, wait.
Right? Because let's create a new one here. Let's create one and name it, something that we can easily recognize. Like hello all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Okay.
Okay, and then go to the all tasks.
Yeah, there you go. It's just doing a fetch all then.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's find it. Save list, update list, get lists. So let's go to the list view model. There's no UID. It goes like this. come this only has the add list? Ah, no, it's here. Jesus Christ, I lost that completely. If not, it goes in empty flow. Yeah, so that's the method. There's a function, get lists.
So does it basically just get all the lists and then add an all tasks list as a constant?
Yeah.
Yeah. But just on the UI, or how does it work?
So I'm seeing here, so it has this collection. So on the UI, on the view model, if there is no user, so it sends the user ID. Nice. And then I'm trying to wrap my mind about it. So you get the lists for that one. And then once you go inside the list, that's when we have to, here, it gets root list ID. So this list ID is being passed when we click. It's the get tasks that we need to look. I was looking at the wrong one. Get tasks. Cool. Yeah, do you see? If the list ID is different than null, then you add the list ID. If not, you just fetch everything because you just have one less around that query, basically. Which is not the behavior we want, right? I mean, the name is all tasks, so technically it is correct. But what we want, ideally, is these are kind of like orphan tasks that don't have a list. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, I can see a case for both, right? I mean, if you have so let's say instead of the all tasks, it had created a list called the orphan tasks, and then a user starts using the application, and they come in and they're like, "Ooh, what's the name of this list here? Orphan task? What does it mean?" So it might be confusing, but if you name it all tasks and you have all the tasks in there, then it seems to the user, oh, this is all my tasks, and it's easier or less confusing for them, right? So I think for the main UI, I really like this idea of having an all tasks list for a list of show me all the stuff that got orphaned because I deleted a list. I think I would try to find a different place for that.
Okay.
Maybe in the settings, right? So or in a place where the user might look if they're lost or if they're upset because they deleted something and now it's gone.
Yeah, it's fair. And then there we can have some sort of UI that allows them to transfer that to one of the other lists or something like
that. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, there's always like many options for doing stuff, and then the question is like, what is the thing that's most obvious to users, the least confusing? And I think oftentimes you'll only realize how well something works when you actually start using it. So this second brain app that I'm working on for myself, I only realized what's missing once I started using it. And there are so many things where I thought, oh, this is really smart, and then I'm like, well, it's in the wrong place.
Yeah, you have to become a user, right? Otherwise you're just in the mindset, too much in the mindset of the developer.
Yep.
You have all the context as the developer, so it all makes sense. And then you have to step out of that shoe and put the customer shoes.
Yeah, exactly. So while we were test driving the Android app, I had Antigravity work with Flowdeck in order to find out what the problem is, and then it apparently fixed the bug and already committed and pushed to the repository,
Oh,
which is
without
not
even
at all
testing.
why
Okay.
I asked. But Here we go. So this is, oh, and in the background, it's running the application on another emulator. So maybe we can also show that at the same time. So this here basically is Antigravity working with Flowdeck to run and compile the application. And I wouldn't be surprised if in a moment it would start remotely controlling the UI. Oh yeah, so can you see that? It took a screenshot and now
Yeah.
it's probably going to start navigating around. But
Yeah.
while it's doing that, we can use the application on here because that simulator, that is the one that I control. So first of all, here is the list of our tasks that we already had. So this is the all tasks list, and let's create a new list, new on iOS, and let's add this. Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh, what's that? Okay. Let's take a look at the data.
Well, yeah. What about
Okay, so it appears here, and that seems to be my, oh, you know what?
the snapshot is not, it's not updating
Oh, that might be the case. So
because
let
it is
me,
created
yeah,
on Firestore.
so that might be one reason. And then the other one, but it's not complaining about any um, any composite indexes, right? So let me start the application just one more, and then hopefully it shows up. Yep, there we
Like,
go.
you just need snapshot
Okay, yeah.
the list collection.
Also, okay, let's go in.
Ooh.
Oh, okay, so there is a navigation problem. A navigation link is presenting a value of type task list, but there is no matching navigation destination declaration visible from the location of the link. It cannot be activated. Okay, so what is happening here? Is it okay? So it thinks it's done the right thing, which clearly it hasn't. So you will be pleased to hear that the Android application is working as intended. Great job. However, on iOS, we've got a couple of problems. For example, when you create a new list, it does not show up in the UI. It shows up on the database, though. Can you come up with an idea of why that is? When I restart the application, the lists do show up, and when I try to navigate into a newly created list, I get the following log output. So let's see.
I love how chatty you are with Antigravity. You would be pleased to hear the Android one. Great job. Oh, so it's still debugging. I'm now researching the code to identify the cause of these issues.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I think it understands that there is something with the snapshot listener. I mean, we can quickly take a look if it's
Yeah, that's
turned
what
on. So we've got our repositories. Here is the task list repository. Well, there is an unsubscribe, and it does set this up, but does it also start this up in the UI? Probably here. Hard to tell. Everything is so big. Okay. So
Okay. implemented. What does it say?
Okay, so it's running the application again on one of the simulators. Let's see which one. While it's doing that, we can go ahead and do this ourselves.
Yeah.
So here we go. Okay. Oops.
It's still going back on the navigation.
Yeah. That is not good.
Did it fix? It didn't fix the error, the snapshot yet, did it? No, it's
Yeah.
just...
So okay. So here is you know, we need to have a composite index. I'm really, I'm surprised that you didn't get the same error message. Okay, so let's create that. Save. Okay, it's building. And then let's see how far we've got here. So the reason for lists not showing up is a missing composite index in Firestore. Because the query is sorted by title, Firestore requires a dedicated index. I've added error logging to catch this. You can create the index by clicking here. Nice. So we're doing that in the background. And then the navigation error. This is caused by navigation destination being inside a conditional block in list's home view. I've restructured the view to ensure the destination is always registered in the navigation stack. I've also moved the hashable conformance for task list to the model file for better visibility. Well, let's see if that actually fixed the problem. But okay.
The different one now.
I think it's the same. Let's see, let me accept this. So we've got the list here. I think, yeah. Oh. Yeah, I think this should be on the list. But let's see if it, okay. Yeah.
It did that?
As I was saying. Okay, let's try.
I'm feeling it. This is the moment. It's gonna work now.
Yep. It would be nice because, that is the time that we set aside for working on it.
Yeah. Can you try creating a new list first? Seeing if the index finished.
Oh, yeah. I mean, is it already finished? Oh, yeah, it's finished. So, ooh. Interesting. Okay, so creating worked, and I can navigate into that.
Can you create something with an obvious name? Oh, yeah, yay, okay, it's an obvious name, so we can see it on the... Oh, no! If you go back...
But it's here.
And then if you go to the...
Yeah.
Okay, so now it shows up. So this one... Weird.
Yeah, so I think the problem is that the the snapshot listener is not properly registered, right? So for example, so if I click on this here, it updates just fine. And if I go here and I tap on that, it doesn't do anything. Yeah, so let's take one more step here. So this works, but funny enough, when I go into one of the lists and try to make a change, like adding something or toggling the completion state, the change is not reflected. Any ideas why that might be the case? I think it's probably also a composite index thing. Yeah, here you go.
It's so strange that this didn't happen for Android.
Yeah, maybe there is some special sauce in Android. Yeah. So this is building in the background, and Antigravity is still thinking. I mean, we're also being a bit unfair, right? It's two of us against one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So while we're waiting on that, let's take another look at what people are saying on the chat. Somebody says, love Firebase. We love to hear it. And then somebody says, use KMP for best use of Kotlin platform.
I haven't used Kotlin multi-platform yet. I haven't felt the need of that yet.
Yeah, I think, so my perspective is that, or, I haven't tried it for an application myself, but from what I know about it, it feels like something that comes in really handy if you have a big chunk of code that you want to reuse in both your Kotlin and your Swift application, and then you just write it once and you can reuse it.
Yeah.
So, and that feels like a really good use case there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just need to wait for the index to finish, right?
Yeah, let's take a look at this is still building. Yeah, but it should be fine. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's that because when you navigate in and out, then it does work. But we can watch while it's finishing and then take 1 or 2 minutes to discuss what we're doing next and when we're doing it.
It finished. Sorry, composite index has been created.
Okay, let's do it. Oh, I need to go to the right window. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing that we implemented a non-trivial feature for 2 platforms at once.
Yeah, at once. And for Android, it simply worked. That was amazing.
Oh, this is not working. Okay.
It seems like there's...
What?
Yeah, it's giving you another composite index.
It says it's still building the index.
It says completed in there. Is that...
Yeah, wait, let's...
Maybe it takes a couple seconds to
propagate. Yeah, let's see. Because in the console, it's still saying that, right? Let me clear that. Oh, it's when you go. Okay.
Oh,
there you go. Yeah.
Woo!
Nice. You were right, Marina.
Cool.
So, what are we going to do next?
Next week. I mean, not next week, next live stream.
Yep.
Why don't we... I like the idea of sharing these lists.
Yeah.
Like, let's say, for example, if I'm planning a party and I have like some friends planning the party with me, it would be quite useful to have a task list that we could just share among us.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that sounds like a fun feature. And do you feel confident that we can YOLO it again and implement it for both platforms at the same time?
I feel pretty confident after today's trial.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so
Cool.
let me quickly look at the calendar. So we had planned to go live next time, March 24th. So that is in slightly more than 2 weeks' time, right? If I'm not entirely mistaken.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Noted.
All right. Any final words before we cut the stream?
Oh, that sounds too serious now. I'll see you all hopefully in March 24th. Looking forward to it.
All right, that sounds great. We will see you in the next one.